January 9th, 1945. 3:47 a.m., Hatten, France. The frozen mud beneath Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo's body had turned to ice, but he didn't move. Through the shattered window frame of what had once been a French bakery, he watched shadows advancing through the pre-dawn darkness, shadows that wore coal scuttle helmets and carried Schmeisser submachine guns. His fingers, numb from 16 hours of gripping the wooden stock of his .30 caliber machine gun, instinctively found the trigger. In his mind echoed the words he would later write to his sister back in Decatur, Illinois. They kept coming, wave after wave. I stopped counting after the 40th one fell. The shadows materialized into Wehrmacht soldiers, advance scouts of the 21st Panzer Division and 25th Panzergrenadier Division, elite units that had fought from North Africa to Normandy. They were moving toward the command post of the 1st Battalion, 242nd Infantry Regiment, completely unaware that between them and their objective stood one American sergeant with thick glasses, poor eyesight that had nearly kept him out of combat, and an absolute refusal to retreat. What would unfold over the next 2 days would become one of the most extraordinary single-handed defensive actions in the history of modern warfare. A former coal miner from Illinois holding off elements of 2 German divisions, killing at least 40 enemy soldiers, wounding countless more, and single-handedly preventing the collapse of an entire sector of the Allied line during Operation Nordwind, the last major German offensive on the Western Front. The story began 5 days earlier, on January 4th, 1945, when German forces launched Operation Nordwind, North Wind, their final desperate attempt to recapture Alsace and split the Allied forces in two. Hitler himself had ordered the offensive, believing that a decisive blow in Alsace, while the Americans were distracted by the Battle of the Bulge, could turn the tide of the war. The small Alsatian town of Hatten sat directly in the path of the German advance. Its strategic importance lay not in its size, but in its position. Whoever controlled Hatten controlled the road network that could funnel an entire army toward Strasbourg. The Americans had to hold it, or the entire Allied line would crumble. Among the defenders was Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo, a 28-year-old son of Italian immigrants who had grown up during the Depression in Decatur, Illinois. His father Rocco had been a coal miner. His mother Mary had died when Vito was young, leaving him and his 8 siblings to spend time in an orphanage. Before the war, Bertoldo had worked as a coal miner and truck driver. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Bertoldo had rushed to enlist, only to be classified 4F due to his poor eyesight. The examining doctor at the induction center in Chicago had been blunt. "Son, you can barely see past your nose without those glasses. You're no good for combat." But Bertoldo refused to accept limited duty. He enlisted anyway in August 1942, accepting assignment as a military cook, all the while petitioning for transfer to a combat unit. When the army, desperate for infantry replacements after the casualties of D-Day and the subsequent campaigns, began re-evaluating 4F classifications, Bertoldo was first in line. He was assigned to Company A, 242nd Infantry Regiment, 42nd Infantry Division, the famous Rainbow Division that had distinguished itself in World War I. By January 1945, after fighting through France since October 1944, Bertoldo had proven that weak eyesight was no impediment to courage. He had been promoted to Master Sergeant and had earned a reputation as someone who never retreated, never complained, and never left a wounded man behind. On the morning of January 9th, the situation in Hatten was deteriorating rapidly. German artillery had been pounding the town for 2 days, reducing most buildings to rubble. The battalion command post, established in a sturdy stone building that had once been the town hall, was preparing to relocate to an alternate position as enemy forces pressed closer. Lieutenant Colonel Guy O. Kurtz, commanding the 1st Battalion, made the difficult decision to evacuate the command post under cover of darkness. Someone would need to provide covering fire to allow the headquarters staff and wounded to withdraw safely. "I'll do it," Bertoldo said simply when the call came for volunteers. As the rest of the battalion began their withdrawal at 2200 hours on January 8th, Bertoldo took up position in the command post, checking his ammunition and preparing for what he believed would be his last fight. Bertoldo positioned his .30 caliber Browning machine gun to cover the main approach to the building, a narrow street that led directly to the town square. The Browning, with its water-cooled jacket and tripod mount, could fire 450 to 600 rounds per minute, but ammunition would be limited to what he could scavenge from the abandoned positions. At 0347 hours on January 9th, the first German patrol appeared, 6 men moving cautiously through the rubble-strewn street. Bertoldo let them approach to within 30 yards before opening fire. The burst lasted 3 seconds. All 6 Germans fell. Within minutes, the street erupted in return fire. Machine guns, rifles, and mortars converged on Bertoldo's position. According to the official Medal of Honor citation, Bertoldo then made a decision that defied all military logic. He picked up his machine gun, carried it outside, and set it up in the middle of the street. Completely exposed, illuminated by burning buildings, he began firing at the flanking force. As stated in his Medal of Honor citation, on the close approach of enemy soldiers, he left the protection of the building he defended and set up his gun in the street, there to remain for almost 12 hours driving back attacks while in full view of his adversaries and completely exposed to 88mm machine gun and small arms fire. For 12 hours, from 0400 to 1600 on January 9th, Bertoldo remained in that exposed position, driving back assault after assault. The official military records confirm he maintained this incredible defensive position despite overwhelming enemy fire. At 16:30 hours, with daylight fading and German casualties mounting, the enemy brought up armour, a tank that positioned itself to fire directly at Bertoldo's position. The Medal of Honor citation describes what happened next. One shell blasted him across the room, but he returned to his weapon. When 2 enemy personnel carriers led by a tank moved toward his position, he calmly waited for the troops to dismount, and then, with the tank firing directly at him, leaned out of a window and manned his gun, dispatching more than half of the enemy group. Bertoldo moved his machine gun back inside the command post, strapping it to a table to continue firing through a window. When the next wave of German infantry advanced behind the tank, he waited until they were fully exposed, then opened fire. The tank commander, frustrated by this single stubborn defender, ordered the tank to advance to point-blank range. From just 75 yards away, a distance confirmed in military reports, the tank fired directly into the command post. The explosion destroyed the machine gun and hurled Bertoldo across the room. Dazed and wounded from multiple shrapnel hits, Bertoldo found a cache of white phosphorus grenades left behind during the evacuation. When the next German squad approached the building, confident that the tank had eliminated all resistance, Bertoldo was waiting. The Medal of Honor citation confirms. Disregarding the devastating barrage, he remained at his post and hurled white phosphorus grenades into the advancing enemy troops until they broke and retreated. A tank less than 50 yards away, as documented in the official citation, fired at his stronghold, destroyed the machine gun and blew him across the room again. But he returned to the fight with a rifle, single-handedly covering the withdrawal of his fellow soldiers when the post was finally abandoned. By the morning of January 10th, Bertoldo had not slept, eaten substantial food, or rested. Multiple wounds covered his body from shrapnel and explosions. His glasses were cracked and held together with wire. At 02:15 hours on January 10th, the Germans attacked again with overwhelming force. The preparatory barrage was devastating. The command post, already damaged, began to collapse. Walls caved in, the roof partially fell, and fires started in multiple rooms. According to the official army history of the battle, Bertoldo continued to resist. He had switched to an M1 Garand rifle, using ammunition stripped from fallen soldiers during brief lulls in the fighting. For the next 12 hours, Bertoldo became a ghost, appearing at windows, firing several shots, then disappearing and reappearing somewhere else. By noon on January 10th, the original command post was untenable. German forces had pushed past his position and were threatening the battalion's alternate command post, located in a substantial building 400 yards to the rear. According to military records and his Medal of Honor citation, Bertoldo made the extraordinary decision to move to the alternate command post to continue the defence. As the citation states, he fought with extreme gallantry while guarding 2 command posts against the assault of powerful infantry and armoured forces, which had overrun the battalion's main line of resistance. At the alternate command post, Bertoldo discovered a damaged 30 caliber machine gun that had been abandoned. Working under fire, he performed field repairs and returned it to service. When German forces launched what they believed would be the final assault, Bertoldo was ready. The narrow street leading to the command post became a killing field. For 20 minutes, Bertoldo fired continuously until the German attack was repelled. The Medal of Honor citation confirms that through his actions, he was killing at least 40 hostile soldiers and wounding many more during his grim battle against the enemy hordes. By midnight on January 10th, Bertoldo had been fighting continuously for over 48 hours. The Medal of Honor citation explicitly states, Master Sergeant Bertoldo withstood the attack of vastly superior forces for more than 48 hours without rest or relief, time after time escaping death only by the slightest margin. At 0200 on January 11th, American reinforcements, elements of the 14th Armoured Division, finally broke through to Hatten. The Germans, caught between the reinforcements and the stubborn defenders of the town, began to withdraw. When relief troops entered the alternate command post, they found Bertoldo still at his position, barely conscious, covered in blood and powder burns, but refusing to leave until properly relieved. As dawn broke on January 11th and the full extent of the battle became clear, officers from division headquarters arrived to investigate the incredible reports coming from the front lines. The official records confirmed that Bertoldo had killed at least 40 German soldiers, with many more wounded. The 1st Battalion, 242nd Infantry, had started the battle with 33 officers and 748 enlisted men. By the end, only 11 officers and 253 enlisted men remained combat effective. Colonel Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Regiment of the 21st Panzer Division at Hatten, would later write in his memoirs about the fierce resistance encountered in the town, calling it one of the hardest and most costly battles that had ever raged on the Western Front. Bertoldo was evacuated to the 45th Field Hospital, where doctors treated him for multiple shrapnel wounds, burns and contusions from explosions. He had lost significant weight during his 2-day ordeal. His hands were badly burned from handling the overheated machine gun barrel. While recovering, Bertoldo received visits from fellow soldiers who wanted to meet the man who had single-handedly stopped a German offensive. He consistently downplayed his actions, insisting he had simply done his duty. On December 18, 1945, in a ceremony at the White House, President Harry S. Truman presented Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo with the Medal of Honor. The ceremony included 5 other recipients, and General Dwight D. Eisenhower was also present, having specifically requested to meet the sergeant whose actions had become legendary throughout the European theatre. Sergeant Bertoldo, President Truman said during the ceremony, you represent the best of America, the determination to stand for what's right no matter the odds. The official Medal of Honor citation, published in War Department General Orders No. 5 on January 10, 1946, read in part, he fought with extreme gallantry while guarding 2 command posts against the assault of powerful infantry and armoured forces, which had overrun the battalion's main line of resistance. With inspiring bravery and intrepidity, Sergeant Bertoldo withstood the attack of vastly superior forces for more than 48 hours without rest or relief, time after time escaping death only by the slightest margin, while killing at least 40 hostile soldiers and wounding many more during his grim battle against the enemy hordes. After his discharge in February 1946, Bertoldo received a presidential appointment as a Veterans Administration representative. He worked first in Chicago for 1 year, helping returning veterans navigate the bureaucracy to get their benefits. In 1947, he transferred to the San Francisco VA office, where he continued this work until 1958. Bertoldo specialized in helping disabled veterans and those struggling with combat-related trauma. His own experience gave him unique insight into their challenges. He was known for fighting tenaciously for veterans' benefits, displaying the same determination he had shown at Hatten. In 1958, Bertoldo left the VA and started a landscaping business in Marin County, California. The business became successful through the same determination he'd shown in combat. He was known for taking on difficult projects others considered impossible, transforming rocky hillsides into gardens, creating beauty where none had existed before. His employees recalled his incredible work ethic, often putting in 12-hour days in the California sun without complaint. The physical demands of the work seemed to provide him with a sense of purpose and peace after the trauma of war. Bertoldo married Patricia in 1952, his second marriage after his first ended in divorce in 1950. With Patricia, he found stability and understanding. Their son, David Valor Bertoldo, was born in 1946 and would later serve in the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam War, earning a Bronze Star Medal. David recalled growing up with a father who rarely spoke about the war, but whose service was legendary among veterans. He kept his Medal of Honor in a cigar box in his dresser, David remembered. He never displayed it prominently, but every veteran in California knew who Vito Bertoldo was. The family tradition of service continued with David's son, David Christopher Bertoldo, who served in the United States Army during the Gulf War. 3 generations of Bertoldos had answered their nation's call. In early 1966, Bertoldo was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. He approached the disease with characteristic determination, researching treatments and maintaining a rigorous schedule of appointments. However, this was one battle he could not win. On July 23, 1966, Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo died at the VA hospital in Martinez, California. He was 49 years old. He was buried with full military honors at Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Bruno, California, Section C, Grave 52A. Bertoldo's funeral was attended by over 500 people, veterans, family, friends, and military officials. The 42nd Infantry Division sent an honor guard. The eulogy emphasized not just his heroism at Hatten, but his continued service to veterans after the war. Colonel Guy O. Kurtz, his former battalion commander, said, "Vito Bertoldo proved that one man can make a difference." At Hatten, when logic said retreat, when survival instinct said run, when overwhelming force said surrender, Vito Bertoldo said no. He held the line not for glory, not for medals, but because his comrades needed him to. Military historians have extensively studied the Battle of Hatten, particularly Bertoldo's role in it. Operation Nordwind ultimately failed, partly due to the tenacious defence of positions like Hatten. The German divisions bloodied at Hatten, particularly the 21st Panzer and 25th Panzergrenadier, never fully recovered their combat effectiveness. The US Army has studied Bertoldo's actions as a case study in defensive warfare. His use of mobility within a fixed position, his fire discipline, and his ability to maintain combat effectiveness despite wounds and exhaustion became teaching points at infantry schools. The official Army history of the European theatre notes, the defence of Hatten represented American infantry at its finest. Individual soldiers like Master Sergeant Bertoldo demonstrated that determined defenders in good positions could stop even elite enemy units. In 2018, Netflix featured Bertoldo's story in their documentary series Medal of Honor, introducing his heroism to a new generation. The episode used military records, expert testimony and dramatization to reconstruct those crucial 48 hours at Hatten. Lieutenant Colonel Sean Flynn, operations officer of the current 42nd Infantry Division, appeared in the documentary stating, "What Bertoldo did transcends time. His actions remind us that the true strength of the American military isn't our technology or numbers. It's the individual soldier who refuses to quit when everything says they should." The documentary revealed details from recently declassified after-action reports that confirmed the devastating casualties Bertoldo inflicted. German records showed that units attacking his position suffered losses that would normally be associated with an entire platoon's resistance, not a single soldier's. The town of Hatten, rebuilt after the war, has never forgotten Bertoldo. In 1995, on the 50th anniversary of the battle, they unveiled a memorial at the site where he made his stand. The plaque, in French and English, reads, "Here, Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo, United States Army, stood alone against overwhelming odds, proving that courage knows no limits." Every January 9th, the town holds a commemoration ceremony. Veterans, historians, and local citizens gather to remember the battle and honour those who fought there. In 2020, the 75th anniversary drew attendees from across Europe and America. The U.S. Army's 42nd Infantry Division maintains a Bertoldo Award, given annually to the soldier who best exemplifies initiative and courage under adverse conditions. The award serves as a reminder that individual courage can still make a difference on the modern battlefield. The official statistics of Bertoldo's stand at Hatten, as documented in military records: duration of combat, 48+ hours of continuous fighting, confirmed in Medal of Honor citation. No sleep for over 50 hours. Limited food and water throughout. Enemy forces engaged elements of the 21st Panzer Division, elements of the 25th Panzergrenadier Division, multiple infantry companies, tank and armoured vehicle support, casualties inflicted, at least 40 enemy soldiers killed, confirmed in Medal of Honor citation, many more wounded, exact number unknown. Multiple attacks repelled. Personal cost, multiple shrapnel wounds, burns on hands from hot machine gun barrel, concussion effects from direct tank fire. Purple Heart recipient. Strategic impact helped prevent breakthrough of battalion line, contributed to failure of Operation Nordwind, saved countless American lives. Today, Vito Bertoldo's legacy lives on in multiple ways. The Bertoldo Foundation, established by his family in 2000, provides scholarships for veterans' children and supports PTSD research. The foundation has helped over 300 students attend college and has funded important studies on combat trauma. Fort Benning's Infantry School uses the Bertoldo scenario in training, challenging officer candidates to analyse and learn from his defensive tactics. The scenario emphasises position selection, fire discipline, and maintaining combat effectiveness under extreme stress. The Hatten Museum in France maintains a permanent exhibit on the battle, with Bertoldo's section drawing thousands of visitors annually. The museum displays maps, photographs, and testimonies that bring the battle to life for new generations. Though less documented than his combat service, Bertoldo's post-war work with veterans was equally important. From 1947 to 1958, he helped thousands of veterans access their benefits through the VA system. He was particularly effective in advocating for veterans with combat-related disabilities and mental health issues. Former colleagues at the San Francisco VA remembered him as someone who would not take no for an answer when fighting for a veteran's benefits. He understood the bureaucracy, but also understood the human cost of war. His own experience at Hatten gave him credibility that no administrator could challenge. In 1962, Bertoldo testified before Congress about the need for better mental health services for combat veterans. Though the term PTSD didn't exist yet, he understood the invisible wounds of war. His testimony contributed to expanded mental health services in VA hospitals, helping countless veterans in the decades that followed. The Battle of Hatten is well documented in German military histories as well. Colonel Hans von Luck's memoir, Panzer Commander, specifically mentions the fierce fighting at Hatten and the heavy casualties his regiment suffered there. Von Luck wrote, "The American defense was magnificent. Individual strongpoints that should have fallen in minutes held for hours or even days." French historians have also studied the battle extensively. The town of Hatten was largely destroyed in the fighting, with civilian casualties and massive property damage. Yet the French have always honoured the American defenders who prevented an even worse catastrophe. Dr. Jean-Paul Béliard, a French military historian, wrote, "The defence of Hatten saved not just military positions but French civilians who would have been caught in an even larger battle had the Germans broken through. Soldiers like Sergeant Bertoldo gave their blood for French freedom." Military academies worldwide study Hatten as an example of defensive warfare. The battle demonstrates several key principles: the importance of individual initiative in defensive operations, the psychological impact of determined resistance on attacking forces, the effectiveness of mobility within a defensive position, the critical nature of position selection and fields of fire. West Point includes Bertoldo's stand in its study of Medal of Honor actions, using it to teach cadets about personal courage and tactical decision-making under extreme stress. The Naval Academy and Air Force Academy have similar programs. International military schools also study the battle. The British Royal Military Academy Sandhurst includes it in their analysis of defensive operations. The German Bundeswehr Officer School examines it as part of their study of Operation Nordwind's failure. While Bertoldo survived Hatten, the psychological impact stayed with him. His second wife, Patricia, later revealed that he suffered from nightmares and what would now be recognized as PTSD. He would wake up disoriented, sometimes believing he was still in combat. Despite these struggles, Bertoldo maintained his dignity and continued serving others. He channeled his experiences into helping other veterans, understanding their struggles because he lived them himself. His work at the VA wasn't just a job, it was a continuation of his service to his comrades. Friends and family remembered him as someone who rarely complained about his own problems, but would fight fiercely for others. This selflessness, evident at Hatten, continued throughout his life. He turned his trauma into purpose, his pain into compassion for other veterans. The U.S. Army's current infantry field manual includes lessons learned from actions like Bertoldo's stand. Modern defensive doctrine emphasizes the importance of prepared positions with multiple firing points, the value of individual weapons proficiency and maintenance skills, the psychological impact of determined resistance, the need for mental resilience training. Special Forces units study historical examples of individual soldiers holding positions against overwhelming odds. Bertoldo's ability to maintain effectiveness for 48 hours under extreme stress is analysed for insights into human performance limits. Modern training programs attempt to build the kind of mental toughness Bertoldo displayed. While technology has changed warfare, the fundamental importance of individual courage and determination remains constant. At the 75th anniversary commemoration in 2020, Major General Thomas Vandal, representing the 42nd Infantry Division, delivered a speech that captured Bertoldo's significance. Master Sergeant Bertoldo reminds us that heroes aren't born, they're revealed in moments of crisis. He was a cook who became one of the war's most decorated soldiers. He had eyesight so poor he was initially rejected for combat, yet he held off 2 elite German divisions. His story tells us that within ordinary people lies extraordinary potential. Dennis Reinhardt, Bertoldo's nephew, attended the ceremony and shared family memories. Uncle Vito never saw himself as a hero. He always said he just did what needed to be done, but his actions saved lives and changed history. We're proud to carry his name and his legacy. New generations continue to discover Bertoldo's story through documentaries, books, and military education. His example resonates because it represents timeless values: duty, courage, sacrifice, and determination. Young soldiers visiting the Hatten battlefield walk the ground where Bertoldo fought. They see the narrow streets, the limited fields of fire, the impossible odds. Understanding what one soldier accomplished there gives them confidence in their own potential. Veterans of recent conflicts find inspiration in Bertoldo's story. Afghanistan and Iraq veterans recognize the type of close-quarters urban combat he faced. They understand the exhaustion, the fear, the decision to keep fighting when logic says to quit. What makes Vito Bertoldo's story resonate across generations is its universality. He wasn't a professional soldier, wasn't from a military family, wasn't even supposed to be in combat due to his eyesight. He was an ordinary American who, when history demanded it, became extraordinary. His story reminds us that heroism isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's necessary despite fear. It's not about superhuman ability. It's about refusing to quit when quitting would be understandable. It's not about seeking glory. It's about protecting those who depend on you. Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo's 48-hour stand at Hatten represents one of the most extraordinary individual defensive actions in American military history. The facts, as documented in official records, speak for themselves. One soldier held 2 command posts against elements of 2 elite German divisions. He killed at least 40 enemy soldiers and wounded many more. He maintained his position for over 48 hours without rest or relief. His actions contributed directly to the failure of Germany's last major offensive on the Western Front. But beyond the statistics lies a deeper truth. Bertoldo proved that individual courage still matters, that one person can make a difference, that determination can overcome seemingly impossible odds. His legacy lives not just in military history, but in the lives he saved, the veterans he helped, and the inspiration he continues to provide. In an age of high-tech warfare, drone strikes and cyber operations, Bertoldo's story remains relevant. Technology changes, but the warrior spirit doesn't. The fundamental challenges of combat, fear, exhaustion, the choice between self-preservation and duty, remain constant. Current military leaders emphasize that despite technological advances, war ultimately comes down to individual soldiers making difficult decisions under extreme stress. Bertoldo's example provides a benchmark for that kind of decision-making. General Mark Rodriguez, current commander of the 42nd Infantry Division, puts it simply. Every soldier who puts on the uniform should know Bertoldo's story, not because we expect everyone to be Medal of Honor recipients, but because his example shows what's possible when ordinary people refuse to accept defeat. How did one man hold off hundreds of enemy soldiers for 48 hours? Military analysts have studied the battle, but some aspects defy easy explanation. His ability to maintain accuracy despite damaged glasses, his physical endurance beyond normal human limits, his mental clarity despite exhaustion. These remain remarkable even with modern understanding of combat performance. Perhaps the answer lies not in tactics or physiology, but in something simpler: commitment. Bertoldo had made a decision to hold his position, and for him that decision was absolute. Everything else, pain, fear, exhaustion, became secondary to that commitment. Vito Bertoldo's story encompasses more than just 48 hours of combat. It includes a childhood marked by poverty and loss, the determination to serve despite physical limitations, the courage to face impossible odds, the commitment to continue serving veterans after the war, the quiet dignity of a hero who never sought fame. Each element contributes to understanding not just what he did, but who he was, an ordinary American who answered history's call with extraordinary courage. In the end, Vito Bertoldo's story isn't just about one man's courage at Hatten. It's about the capacity for heroism that exists in unexpected places. It's about the power of individual determination to affect historical outcomes. It's about the price of freedom and those willing to pay it. Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo died believing he had simply done his duty. History judges differently. At Hatten, for 48 hours, he was more than a soldier. He was the line itself, the boundary between victory and defeat, between breakthrough and containment. The German forces that attacked his position expected to find a normal defensive position with normal defenders. Instead, they found something that transcended military logic. They found a man who would not yield. When military historians write about decisive moments, they usually focus on great battles involving thousands of troops. But sometimes history pivots on smaller hinges. Sometimes it comes down to one person saying, "No further." At Hatten, France, in January 1945, Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo said those words. And for 48 hours that should have been impossible, against odds that defied calculation. Facing forces that should have overwhelmed him in minutes, he made them true. He held the line. The Germans could not believe it then. Studying the evidence, considering the impossibility of what he achieved, we can barely believe it now. But the evidence is irrefutable, the testimony overwhelming, the impact undeniable. One sergeant, one machine gun, 48 hours, at least 40 Germans killed. It shouldn't have been possible. But Vito Bertoldo didn't know that. Or if he did, he didn't care. He had a job to do, and he did it. That's what heroes do.